My name is Dr. Seraphina Rossi. I'm 43 years old, and I am the founder and principal consultant of Veritas Provenance, a boutique firm specializing in the authentication and recovery of lost art. I hold a PhD in art history from Boston University, and my office overlooks the historic brownstones of Back Bay. My clients are galleries, auction houses, and wealthy private collectors from around the world. My life, to put it modestly, is a canvas of my own making, painted with the colors of effort and success. But 5 years ago, on my 38th birthday, my life was a smeared, unfinished sketch, defiled by indifference and an act of betrayal so cruel it bordered on the absurd. Indifference isn't a hurricane. It's acid rain, a steady drizzle that erodes your soul day after day until you no longer recognize your own reflection. My family, the Rosses, were masters of that corrosive art. Living in a sprawling mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, my parents, Richard and Eleanor Rossi, measured success with a single metric: the tangible bottom line. My father was a corporate finance shark, a man whose voice always carried the timbre of a shareholder report. My mother, a woman of perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a smile that never reached her eyes, was the chief architect of our family's flawless image. And in that architectural masterpiece, their son, my younger brother Michael, was the gleaming marble pillar. Michael, 2 years my junior, had dropped out of college, stumbled into real estate, and somehow fell upward into success. His deals, his flashy cars, his extravagant vacations all were recounted at family dinners with undisguised admiration. Michael was a profitable investment. And I, Seraphina? I was a write-off. My passion for art history, for the stories whispered from layers of old oil paint, was dismissed as a frivolous hobby, an impractical career. Sarah and her dusty old books, my father would say with a dismissive wave, as if shooing away a fly. Every one of my academic achievements, from my full-ride undergraduate scholarship to my acceptance into a prestigious PhD program, was met with a tepid nod. "That's nice, dear," my mother would say, before turning to ask Michael about a new luxury condo project. They saw no value in what I did because it couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet. I had spent my life screaming in a soundproof room, desperate for an ounce of genuine pride, a sliver of recognition. My 38th birthday was supposed to be a milestone. I had just successfully defended my doctoral dissertation after 6 grueling years of library archives, teaching assistantships, and a diet of instant noodles. I was officially Dr. Seraphina Rossi. That title, to me, was worth more than any stock portfolio. A week before my birthday, I had called home, my voice buzzing with excitement, to share the news. "Oh, that's wonderful," my mother said, her voice distant. "I'm on my way to the club, you know. Your father's tournament. We'll talk later." They never called back. My birthday came and went in silence. A heavy, oppressive silence that was louder than any screaming match. Not a single call. Not a single text, save for the automated notification from an online flower service my mother had likely set up years ago. I sat alone in my small rented apartment in Allston, the light from a single cupcake I'd bought for myself dancing across stacks of books. A tear slid down my cheek, mingling with the frosting. It wasn't sadness, but a profound emptiness. I was used to being an afterthought, but this complete erasure was a new kind of wound, one that cut deeper than all the rest. But the story doesn't end there. The final blow, the one that shattered everything, arrived a week later in the form of a thick, cream-colored envelope, embossed with my father's law firm's logo in the corner. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was this a late apology? A surprise birthday check? I was wrong. So terribly wrong. Inside was not a card. It was a professionally bound document with the cold, clinical title, ****. Itemized statement of investment in Seraphina Rossi. ****. The room began to spin as I turned the pages. It was a brutally detailed list of every expense they had incurred on my behalf since I was 18, adjusted for inflation. My freshman year of college tuition, they had conveniently forgotten the full scholarship I'd earned for the subsequent years. The cost of repairs on the used car they had given me, childhood dental visits, even the plane tickets to fly home for Christmas. Each item was dated, described, and calculated with compound interest. The grand total, $20,127.45. On the final page, there was a short, typed letter from my father. Dear Seraphina, congratulations on your academic achievement. Now that you have completed your prolonged and expensive education and are officially a doctor, the family feels it is an appropriate time for you to begin taking responsibility for the investments made in your future. We have considered this an interest-free loan to date, but the time has come to begin repayment. We expect the first installment within 30 days. Sincerely, your father and mother. I read the letter again and again, each word a shard of glass in my gut. This wasn't a bill, it was a manifesto. It was a declaration that their love was conditional. Their support was a transaction. My existence was a debt. They had taken my memories, my youth, and put a price tag on them. The night I'd called home crying over a failed exam was, to them, an expensive long-distance call. The summer I'd spent in an unpaid internship at a small museum was, to them, a waste of living expenses. A rage rose in me, not hot and fiery, but cold and arctic. It extinguished the pain, the despair, and left behind a terrifying clarity. You cannot reason with people who have calculated your worth down to the cent. You cannot seek love from those who view you as a liability on their personal ledger. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by my window, looking out over the quiet streets of Boston, and a plan formed. Not a plan for revenge, but for liberation. The next morning, I went to the bank and withdrew a single, crisp $1 bill. Then I went to a convenience store and bought a money order. In steady, deliberate handwriting, I made it out to Richard and Eleanor Rossi. In the amount box, I wrote $1.00. In the memo line, I wrote 2 words, paid in full, I placed the money order and the single dollar bill in an envelope. I wrote no letter. My silence would be my response. My action would be my final statement. I sent it via certified mail, ensuring they would have to sign for it. And then, I vanished. Vanishing didn't mean changing my name or fleeing the country. It was more surgical. I performed a systematic digital and emotional amputation. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their emails. I deleted and blocked their social media accounts and those of all mutual friends. I sent a brief, polite email to the few extended relatives I genuinely cared for, explaining I was starting a new chapter and would be in touch when I was ready. I erected an impenetrable firewall between my past and my future. The first few months felt like learning to breathe again after nearly drowning. There were moments when the loneliness was a physical ache. Nights when I'd wake up, my hand reaching for the phone to call my mom out of sheer habit, before the cold reality hit me. The grief was still there, but it was now encased in purpose. Their betrayal became my fuel. That $20,000 bill wasn't a burden, it was a gift. It had freed me from the lifelong illusion that I needed their approval to be whole. Life as a newly minted PhD was anything but glamorous. I worked as an adjunct professor at 2 different colleges, racing between campuses, grading papers in coffee shops, and surviving on a meager salary. My Alston apartment had a faulty heating system and noisy neighbors. But it was mine. Every bill I paid, every meal I cooked, was an affirmation of my independence. During this time, I rebuilt my definition of family. Family wasn't about blood, it was about who stands with you in the trenches. My chosen family consisted of 3 people. First, there was Dr. Alistair Finch, my dissertation advisor. A small, brilliant Englishman with twinkling eyes behind thick glasses and a collection of worn tweed jackets. Alistair saw not just a student in me, but a scholar. When I told him my story, my voice trembling in his book-lined office, he simply listened. He didn't offer platitudes. He poured me a cup of Earl Grey tea and said, "Seraphina, my dear, The finest minds are often forged in the harshest fires. Let your outrage be your anvil. He became the father figure I never had, the mentor who opened doors I didn't even know existed. Second was Chloe, my best friend from grad school. A medieval historian, Chloe was also navigating the brutal landscape of academia. We had weathered all-night study sessions, shared countless cheap pizzas, and propped each other up through rejection letters. She was the one who sat with me on my 38th birthday, handing me tissues and then a glass of whiskey. When I cut off my family, Chloe became my emergency contact. She was living proof that friendship could be more binding than blood. And the third, most unexpectedly, was Mr. Armand Dubois. I met him through a small consulting gig Alistair had recommended. Dubois was a retired industrialist, a French-Canadian living in a Beacon Hill brownstone filled with impressive art. He had purchased a 19th-century landscape at a minor auction and had a nagging doubt about its attribution. I spent 2 weeks buried in archives, old catalogs, and forgotten letters. I ultimately proved the painting was not by some unknown artist, but an early, lost work by a master of the Hudson River School. The look on Mr. Dubois' face when I presented my findings, a thick binder of irrefutable evidence, was a moment of revelation. He didn't just look at the painting, he looked at me. "Young lady," he said in his deep, rumbling voice, "you do not just have knowledge, you have tenacity, that is far rarer." That single job earned me a handsome fee, but more importantly, it gave me an idea. There was a market for my skills, a market outside the low-paying academic world. There were wealthy people who would pay for truth, for certainty. With Alistair's encouragement and a small business loan, co-signed by Mr. Dubois, I founded Veritas Provenance, Veritas, Truth. That was my mission. My first office was a corner of my apartment. My first client was Mr. Dubois, who hired me to authenticate his entire collection. Word began to spread through the wealthy, insular art collecting circles of Boston. There was a new art detective in town, one with the meticulousness of a scholar and the tenacity of a bulldog. For the next 2 years, I worked like a woman possessed. I channeled my grief and loneliness into productivity. My schedule was planned down to the minute. 6 a.m. wake up for a run along the Charles River. 7 to 9 a.m. writing and research. 9 to 5 client work. Evenings were for lecture prep or networking events. I quit my adjunct positions the moment Veritas Provenance could pay me a living wage. I went from 2 clients to 5, then 15. My annual revenue climbed from $0 to $90,000, then to over $250,000. I moved from the shabby Alston apartment to a beautiful space in Back Bay that served as both my home and office. My success wasn't a miracle. It was the product of thousands of hours of relentless work. It was 2 a.m. phone calls with archivists in Europe, weekend trips to libraries in New York, and nerve-wracking presentations to corporate boards. I built my small empire on a foundation of rejection. Every new client was a validation. Every dollar I earned was a refutation of my father's claim that I was a bad investment. Through it all, there was not a word from Greenwich. My wall of silence held. I sometimes wondered what they did with that $1 money order. Did they frame it as a reminder of my defiance? Did they rip it to shreds in a fit of rage? I didn't know, and to my own surprise, I didn't care. Their absence had created the space I needed to grow. And then, 5 years after that fateful birthday, the past came calling. I had been invited to be the keynote speaker at the International Art and Heritage Symposium at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. This was the pinnacle of my career. Speaking at the Met was the academic equivalent of playing Carnegie Hall. Forbes had also recently featured me in an article on game changers in the art world, calling me one of the most trusted voices in art authentication. Apparently, someone in Greenwich had read the article. My phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. An unfamiliar number from Connecticut. I normally wouldn't answer, but something compelled me. "Hello? Zara?" "It's me, Michael." That voice. The same smug tone, but now laced with something I couldn't identify. Hesitation? I was silent, my heart beginning a slow, heavy drumbeat against my ribs. "Sarah, are you there?" he pressed, a note of anxiety in his voice. Listen, I know it's been a while, but, wow, I just saw the Forbes piece. Dr. Seraphina Rossi. It's incredible. Mom and Dad are so proud. Proud. Asterisk. The word was a bitter, foreign object in his mouth. Proud now that I was in a business magazine? Proud now that my success could be quantified in a language they understood? What do you want, Michael? My voice was ice. He seemed not to notice. We saw you're giving that big speech in New York. At the Met. That's amazing. We thought we'd come. The whole family. To support you, we could get dinner afterward, like old times. Like old times. Asterisk. A chill ran down my spine. Old times were dinners where I sat in silence while they celebrated his triumphs. Old times were the feeling of being invisible in my own home. Don't bother, I said, my voice flat. What? Sarah, don't be like that. It's been 5 years. Can't you just let it go? Mom and Dad miss you. Let it go? Asterisk. He wanted me to let go of being billed for my own existence? He wanted me to forget the betrayal that had reshaped my entire life? The rage, long buried, began to simmer. I have nothing to say to you, Michael. My speech is for professionals in my field. It is not a family reunion. Do not come. I hung up before he could reply. My hands were shaking, but not with fear. It was fury. They had no right. They had no right to waltz into the world I had built from nothing, from my own sweat and tears, and act like they belonged there. But I knew they would come. Their arrogance wouldn't allow them to be dismissed. They would show up, expecting a public reconciliation, a heartwarming story of a family reunited. They wanted to bask in a spotlight they had done nothing to help create. And that's when I knew what I had to do. My speech would not just be about art, it would be my testimony. The Grace Rainey Rogers Auditorium at the Met was packed. Museum curators, collectors, scholars, and journalists sat in hushed anticipation. From the wings, I could see them. My father, in an expensive suit, looking older but still exuding an air of authority. My mother, her blonde hair still perfect, sitting ramrod straight with a strained smile. And Michael, looking around the room with a proprietary air, as if he'd arranged the event himself. They were in the third row, perfectly positioned to see and be seen. Alistair and Chloe were in the front row. Alistair gave me a small wink. Chloe gave me a thumbs up. Mr. Dubois, who had flown in from Paris, sat beside them, nodding encouragingly. They were my family. They were why I was here. When I stepped onto the stage, a strange calm washed over me. The stage lights were warm. I took a deep breath and began. Good evening. My name is Dr. Seraphina Rossi, and I want to tell you a story about value. I spoke of forgotten masterpieces, paintings languishing in basements or misattributed for centuries. I spoke of how an object's true worth isn't in its price tag, but in its story, its history, its provenance. I described the painstaking process of recovering those lost stories, of restoring identity and value to what had been dismissed as worthless. Provenance, I said, my voice filling the hall, is a form of truth. It tells us where an object came from, who it belonged to, and what journeys it has endured. It separates a true masterpiece from a perfect copy. It is the soul of the work. I could feel my family's eyes on me. They were smiling, nodding, thinking this speech was about me, their successful product. They still didn't understand. But provenance doesn't just apply to art, I continued, making a deliberate pivot. It applies to people. Each of us has a provenance. A collection of experiences, relationships, trials, and triumphs that have shaped who we are. And sometimes, that provenance is misread. Sometimes, a person's value is wrongly determined by others based on shallow metrics like profit or convenience. I paused, looking out over the crowd. I did not look at the third row. I didn't have to. I learned the hard way that you must become the authenticator of your own story. You must do the research, verify the facts, and declare your own value, even when the people who were supposed to be the custodians of your memory try to write you out of it. The silence in the room was now thick enough to cut with a knife. The smile had vanished from my mother's face. My father sat motionless, his expression an unreadable mask. My journey in this field would have been impossible without support. Not the kind of support that's recorded in a ledger, but the kind that is given freely, out of kindness and belief. So, today, on this prestigious stage, I want to honor my own provenance. And then, I delivered the final, crushing blow. I want to dedicate my career, my work, to my real family. To Dr. Alistair Finch, who taught me that knowledge is a torch, not a commodity. To Chloe Martinez, who showed me that friendship is the strongest shelter. And to Mr. Armand Dubois, who took a chance on me when I was just an unproven idea. I looked directly at Alistair, Chloe, and Mr. Dubois. Their eyes were shining as they beamed at me. The auditorium erupted in warm applause. And to honor their legacy of unconditional belief, I said, as the applause subsided, I am incredibly proud to announce the formation of the Alistair Finch Resilience Grant, a fellowship that will provide full financial and mentorship support to first-generation doctoral students in the humanities who are pursuing their passion without a family safety net. Because no one should ever be sent a bill for their dreams. This time, the applause was thunderous. A standing ovation. For a split second, before the stage lights blinded me, I glanced at the third row. That image will be forever seared into my memory. My father's face was ashen. The raw shock and humiliation were naked in his eyes. My mother looked as though she'd been struck, her perfect composure shattered into a million pieces. And Michael, his face burning with a mixture of rage and shame, was staring at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. It wasn't triumph I felt, it was closure. A release. I hadn't screamed or accused. I had simply told my story, my provenance, and in doing so, had written them out of it. I had taken their power over me, not by confronting them, but by rendering them irrelevant. After the speech, I was surrounded by well-wishers. But I only made my way to the three people in the front row. We hugged, a tight circle of genuine love in a sea of strangers. I never looked back to see how the Rossis left. They never tried to contact me again. My speech was reported on in art blogs and alumni publications. The story of the grant was shared. My public silence about them was more damning than any accusation could ever be. They had come seeking public validation and had received it, just not in the way they had ever imagined. They had become ghosts in my success story. Now, sitting in my office overlooking the city that became my home, I often think about that $1 money order. It was the best investment I ever made. It bought me my freedom. It bought me my life. My story is more than just about a broken family. It is a deeper lesson, a philosophy forged in pain, for anyone who has ever felt undervalued, dismissed, or turned into a number on someone else's spreadsheet. First, you are the final appraiser of your own worth. Asterisk, asterisk. The world, and even those closest to you, may try to impose their metrics on you: money, status, conformity. But your intrinsic value, your unique talents, the resilience of your spirit are beyond price. Never grant anyone else that power. Conduct your own provenance, trace the origins of your strength, and declare it with pride. Second, family is a verb, not a noun. Asterisk, asterisk. It is built through actions of love, support, sacrifice, and belief. Blood is merely a starting point, not a guarantee. Have the courage to find and cultivate your chosen family, the mentors, friends, and kindred spirits who see you, cheer for you, and hold a safe space for you to fail and rise again. These relationships, built on a foundation of mutual respect, are often more permanent than the bonds we are born into. Third, pain can be a powerful catalyst. Asterisk, asterisk. Betrayal and hurt can paralyze us, or we can alchemize them into fuel. Just as pressure turns coal into diamonds, the pressure of adversity can clarify your purpose and forge a strength you never knew you had. Don't let your pain define you, let it refine you. Let your righteous anger become the energy you use to build, create, and overcome. And the final lesson, perhaps the most important. The sweetest revenge is not destruction, but relentless creation. Asterisk. Asterisk. The urge to retaliate, to hurt those who hurt you, is a human one, but it keeps you chained to the past. The ultimate revenge, the final victory, is to build a life so beautiful, so full, and so meaningful that the people who hurt you no longer have any space in it. Turn their absence into a garden, and in it, plant seeds of joy, success, and compassion. Live so well that your existence itself becomes the answer to everything they did wrong. I am Dr. Seraphina Rossi. I was sent a bill for my past. I paid with $1 and vanished. And in that empty space, I found everything.